Okay, we're going to get started. So I have to actually thank Jeff for the topic because he, after in service, handed me this little cheat sheet of, Jennifer, here are all these fine discussion areas that we could focus on as a group. And when I was thinking about how to start off our Fridays at the Fishbowl, I was thinking about the place that I'm at, and I think there are other faculty members in the same spot where you are desperate to try to bring as many things together as possible in one time period because I feel this drastic desire to prioritize and make everything count as much as possible. And so in thinking about that and what to do for our first session, I thought it might be useful to help the teaching circles rethink about how we're beginning this year. So we're starting a little bit late in a semester, but it's not too late, arguably, to think about our teaching circles. And I know that some individuals have expressed some degree of frustration with teaching circles in general, and yet they still want to be a part of them. And then other individuals have said, oh, I have a terrific teaching circle, and it's been enormously beneficial. And part of the purpose behind this, too, is to reconsider our approach to teaching circles. So sometimes it becomes more of a, how can I check this off the list, rather than thinking about how does this fulfill its original purpose and hopefully in some way, shape, or form rejuvenate me, make my teaching more effective, make my use of time more effective. And so that's where I took this, Jeff. Looking at your titles, I thought we could hopefully use this time wisely before the majority of the groups began. And I developed the PowerPoint only because we have a few people that will be listening to this. I thought they needed something other than just my voice. But it actually helps keep me on track a little bit too. So the writing piece that I'd like to begin with, if you would indulge me here for a few moments, is for when I was thinking about how do we approach this as a group, I thought we probably need to answer a few questions. And even though we did this last year, I think that our answers may be different this year, or at least different enough that it warrants taking the time to do this. So perhaps we could just spend a few moments thinking about the first few questions. In your mind, what's the purpose of a teaching circle? So if people are frustrated, it means that somehow that group is not meeting their needs. So what do you envision a teaching circle doing for you? If we don't know the purpose that you have in mind, then it makes it difficult to actually achieve that objective, right? Thinking about why you're interested in a teaching circle, and this is where I say something, the exact same thing that I say to my students on the first day of class, be honest. So when I ask students why they're in my course, 99% of them say because I have to be. And that's it, but that's actually useful for me because when I'm thinking about how I organize the day and the kinds of examples that I give and the way that I need to get buy-in from my students, knowing that they have to be there is key, right? It's not one of your classes, Paul, where they're in their second or third year of calculus and they desperately want to be in that class. And so the way that you have to address them is different than the way that I've got to get students who hate public speaking and are wondering why they're wasting their money in such a ridiculous course, which is where most of them are at. So I think that's a valuable question. Thinking about your group. So everyone in here has actually already chosen a group, right? But why did you choose that group? I think that might help us understand what's going on, especially if there's a little bit of dissatisfaction or maybe just disappointment that what you envisioned isn't happening. Your most rewarding experience, because I think that can help us in thinking about where we want to go in the future at West Shore with the teaching circles, and the most frustrating experience, and then what you're hoping to gain. So you don't have to answer every single one of those questions if you feel like maybe your answer to the first one answers 2 or 3 of them. But if we could just take 5 to 7 minutes, maybe as much as 10, to answer at least the majority of those questions, that will help us begin today. Okay, so maybe we can get started in talking about the answer. Anybody want to start off with looking at the purpose of a teaching circle? And I'm just going to take notes because it will help me as the person that's charged with organizing and helping people out with this.
Well, I'll say something first. You referred to that list I made over. All that list was something I kept in my completely miscellaneous folder. And it was just occasionally things that came up in usually kickoff meetings or faculty meetings that had to do with teaching and our kind of day-to-day experience here that we never really addressed in kickoff meetings. We had these big formal other things. So I just had a list of that. And to me, the teaching circle is one of the things that answers that. It just provides space and time to reflect on teaching. And I think it's kind of a shame that we're better now, a lot better now, with kickoffs and stuff like that. It was so much driven by administrative issues, all that other stuff.
That was a jackpot list, though. Yeah.
So you liked it?
No, I mean, every single piece that you have, I'm like, yeah, this would be great and great. Truly.
Do you mean that the teaching circle can serve the purpose of providing the space and those things that don't happen, if that happens?
Exactly.
Well, one of the things I wrote down was saying exactly what you said. Talking about methodologies, I thought the original intent and purpose of the teaching and learning circle was to work with my colleagues on this.
I put down therapy because it's that give and take. I mean, I can sit in my office and think about all the stuff that I want to do and blah, blah, blah. But until I sit down with someone else and have them ask me questions about why I want to do this, and we have a give and take and a back and forth, and also to, get that experience from someone else that's either has new ideas or maybe has done it before, and it's very therapeutic, along with the collegiality and everything. Being able to just share ideas and get feedback on, are the things that are going on in my head normal, or
Well, no.
do I have issues that I need to let
Yes.
go of? Is this okay? And, yeah.
I'll help you out. Sarah, I'll help you out.
All right, thank you.
Actually, Sean and I just had a meeting before this, and one of the things I said I struggle with is in early childhood, I'm one voice. It's one set of eyes, one voice. I want more. I want more input or more things, and we actually were talking about the program review, but taking Sean's ideas or Sean's eyes on it, and I thought, oh, well, I never thought about organizing it that way. I just spewed out the information and the strategic objectives of early childhood and was moving forward.
So I think this is just kind of an overall general thing that I just want to improve my teaching. And I think, all of us are there. I want to be able to challenge students, but also to make sure that their overall experience can be positive and be good. And so I have a lot of great colleagues, and so I want to learn from them to see if there's an approach that I can take that's exactly like theirs, or modify it a little bit and apply it to me and to my academic discipline. So.
Yeah, when you said language, that's kind of a problem. Is that there are so many good teachers around here. It's like I remind myself over and over, but I can't be like that person. And so I have to be myself. And so I think that really narrows it. Seriously, that really narrows it. Because I think, I'd love to be able to stand up in front of a class and like natural.
Jump on a table.
Or like so many other people. But I'm thinking, well, I could try that, and maybe eventually that I could fake it till I make it. But it doesn't. I got to figure out how to be better being me, if that's possible.
I said gaining insight and feedback, because I'm still at the point where I'm trying to figure out what I am as a teacher, like my own style, and having having feedback from other people, and and also learning through giving insight to other people would be really valuable.
So I've been in two very different ones in recent years. The year that we read Academically Adrift, that kind of teaching circle was hugely beneficial for me professionally, because there were things in that book that I wanted to think about more, and I did have a chance to think about it with other people once we talked about it. And so that was beneficial for the kind of theory grounding my practice. So I wanted to, it's kind of the reason why I went on sabbatical. It's a whole bunch of stuff that I wanted to talk about more seriously. But the one that I did last year with Wade and Ted was much more, friends helping each other become better teachers. And that kind of circle was beneficial in a different way. One of those ways was hugely practical. It was just stuff I didn't know how to do, and that they did, and so I learned stuff from them because of that. But another one is that occurs to me, listening to Jeff's comment, that I can't teach like either of them teach. I just can't do some of the things that they do because of their personalities and their teaching style. But the fact that I know about their teaching much better now helps me relate to them better professionally. Right? I have not seen very many of Wade's classes, but I pretty much know what he does because how we talk about the teaching circle, so I can working with students or working with, or thinking about math and all that kind of stuff. I know that better because of the teaching circle.
Did anyone else want to say anything more?
About the first one?
Right, or we can move on to the second one then. I mean, I think we're all on the same page. There's this desire to fulfill a thirst for theory and yet ground it in some concrete and practical areas and figure out how it relates to us specifically. I mean, one of the things that I tell my students, especially in public speaking class, is that part of the purpose of that class is to figure out who you are as a speaker and to really capitalize on your strengths and figure out how you can address those areas that you perceive as your weaknesses. And so that's how I relate to it too. Let's talk about well, I think that answers a lot of the second question too, unless there's something that someone else has that we haven't talked about yet, Paul.
The old observation method of the administrator to me was pointless.
Mhm.
They just didn't provide anything. I found it was no wrong.
So you found, so the primary reason, or a primary reason for you being part of a teaching circle is to have this other means of observation that you think is more,
Yeah, that's one thing.
you know. Anybody else have anything you want to add to that? Okay, so let's look at the third question then. Why did you choose the group that you are in?
I was trying to remember how it came about. And I think it was just really a matter of convenience that, like at the end of previous presentation we used to have in the old faculty innovation center, there were some of us around, and some of the sitting with teaching circles, and I said something up. And so why did I choose a group like this?
Okay, so there's no specific reason for you. Anybody else? Well, I think, Sean, if I remember correctly, I think the three of you chose each other because you were looking at the way you might complement one another.
Is that what it was?
No, truly, that's what I remember. Like you saying, I don't know about these things. I know that Wade is the technology specialist, and I know that Ted has a lot of technology, and he had just developed that whole, the table system and that, and so you were interested in that, and they were interested in some of the different theory approaches that you have. That's what I remember. And I think with the occupational group, what I remember hearing, and I briefly met with Connie earlier in this semester, and it was very much focused on individuals who understand the challenges of internships and the co-ops and other more kind of pragmatic pieces of those majors. So that's what I heard coming from those groups. But the reason I put that question on there, I thought Because when I was thinking about why are some people dissatisfied and other people highly satisfied, and I thought, are we simply choosing groups because they are the people that are our friends, and maybe that's not the best group to be with then, because it doesn't actually address why you were in a teaching circle? Does that make sense? Like, I wrote down for mine, I chose the people that I am in a teaching circle with because they are people that I feel safe with, as well as I know they will challenge me to think about. We don't see the world the same way. So I felt like I could disclose parts of my teaching practice and frustrations and wonderings to them without feeling as though they were going to judge me or my credibility would somehow diminish as a result.
Last year, I was with Paul and Joe, and I specifically sought out people who were not anywhere near my academic discipline. I just wanted to do that. This year, I'm in the online group because of a couple reasons. One is that I think I've got a good class, but it's not, nobody's ever evaluated it or nobody's ever looked at it, and so I thought it'd be good to do that. Also, we've got, there's an external force too, that this will be imposed on us starting in the fall of next year, and so why not try to shape this as it's coming? And so I thought that, it's kind of weird. I keep current in my quote-unquote academic discipline in a range of ways, with journals or trying to go to conferences or things like that, or research or whatever. But I also try to keep current with technology, and I've been to league conferences in the past that have really been helpful, League for Innovation, and that wasn't on the horizon this year for me, and so I thought, well, this can help me to maybe hone or sharpen some things with technology. So.
Well, that's why I chose the online too, is because I wanted to look at other people's examples and have them look at mine and feedback mostly. And then the other one, default.
It is?
I think so.
I was really interested in the occupational. It was not my idea to bring all the occupational together. It was one of my colleagues, but I was interested in it because I was hoping, as you had mentioned, people with like situations as myself working forward, are we offering enough occupational degrees? Do we need to look at it? I also had some concerns that occupational faculty-wise has really shrunk over the last several years. It was hoping this group we'd be able to work towards some of these things. Are we where we need to be? Do we need to change? Do we need to be, if you want to use the word aggressive, do we need to alter some of our degree offerings, increase our degree offerings, things like that?
I'm going to actually skip ahead for a minute, if that's okay. So keeping in mind these frustrating and rewarding, because I think some of those answers are coming out, and present a few models that we could think about as we move forward this year, especially because not all of, the majority of the groups haven't officially met yet. I've spent a handful of hours in the past week researching what teaching circles look like at different institutions. Some community colleges, although they seem to be more four-year institutions, and 99% of them have a teaching and learning center with a specific director and all sorts of resources and all of that. So keeping that in mind, I looked at what is realistic for us. And there are a few different models that I've seen happening, and these aren't the terms that they use, it's just how it appears to me, where you can have a self-selected group and a rotating topic and facilitator within that group. So a couple of years ago, Rebecca and Matt and Sean and John Wolf and Natalie and I were in a group, and that's really what it was, is we had created that group, and each week or twice a month, there was a different facilitator. That facilitator chose the readings and focused on a different issue in his or her classroom. And then the rest of the group worked on that issue over the course of the meeting with that person. Another self-selected group decides on a primary focus and a primary facilitator. So that's not at all uncommon in these teaching circles that I'm seeing from different universities and colleges. And so I'll spend more time talking about that in just a minute. And how I'm relating this back to how can teaching circles best serve us is I think thinking about the structure of what our teaching circle looks like and how we can use that to best meet what we've just spent time talking about in our answers to those questions. The predetermined focus area and theme. So, and this would take some time. That part couldn't really fully happen until January, quite honestly, where a group of individuals, or maybe even the whole faculty during one of Brooke's meetings, would decide on 5 to 7. And this is, I've talked with Brooke about all of these things, and she's not opposed to any of them. We would decide on 5 to 7 themes, and they can range from very large institutional themes, almost like in alignment with an AQUIP or assessment or something like that. And I've seen different institutions online that do that. They specifically choose, and they're not called AQUIP because they're part of a different accrediting body, but it's basically an AQUIP project. And then the teaching circle focuses on that, all the way down to very course specific, and I'll show you one from U of M Flint that is a course, and so the people that are involved in that course, like a composition or an FYF, have their own teaching circle, and what that might look like. And then, again, a predetermined focus or theme, and there's a primary facilitator with that. So those are just some different models for us to think about. Right now, it seems like it's kind of up in the air and whatever, and I don't think that's necessarily bad or that there's anything wrong with it, but just to entertain the idea of maybe thinking about the structure in a different way. So one of the examples that I have is from UNC Charlotte, and they allow for self-selected groups, and they don't have a set topic, but what they do in their teaching and learning circle description is they provide, these are the options that they provide for people. And so it's everything from that guided discussion and the round robin where there's a focus of it, so it's going to be looking at how we use technology, is technology taking over the classroom? And then everyone comes to that meeting ready to share out his or her opinion on it. They might actually bring in experts on a particular area and talk to the group. One way that they might organize their group is through this idea of progress reports. Now, I'm not sure if any of us would be for that right now, just because it seems like what I'm hearing from people is that everyone feels, overwhelmed with the amount of reporting and just general stuff that we have to do. I thought this peer tutoring piece was interesting. So you take a topic and each person chooses 1 or 2 different areas of that topic, and you are charged with learning about it and then coming back and tutoring your peers in that teaching group on that specific area. And then finally, just totally open-ended, which again, depending on the group, that could work really well, or it could leave people frustrated because there's just a sense of, what are we doing here, besides having another meeting to check this off of our IAP, which is not the purpose of this, right? That it's hopefully rewarding. And then I know this is a lot of text. I put this much text on here for the people that are viewing this later on, okay, so I wouldn't normally. But looking at this Georgia College, and so on the left side of the screen, what you see is this is what they require of each of the teaching circles. So you sign up, but, and it has to be interdisciplinary, and you have to describe it in a way that the general audience could understand. You can request money for things like food at your meeting, for textbooks, for those kinds of things. And then there is a specific chair who at the end of that academic year submits a report. And I included these 2 over here, oh shoot, because I wanted to give you 2 samples. So it's a 4-year institution, so they're able to go a little bit more in terms of research and specifically looking at qualitative methods, right? So that might not be something we do, but they list the group members and then they have like this report out for the rest of the colleagues to be able to go back and look at. I don't know if that's useful or not. I just thought it was interesting that that's part of how they organize their particular teaching circles. Or the second one, I chose that because I know we've talked about that issue in general, removing the textbooks and going to ebooks. And so one group focused on that. And so rather than having a team, it might be faculty members who are focused on that. And again, because it's discipline, you'll hear that range of perspectives represented. And then the last one that I wanted to show you, and again, I know there's a lot of text, but it's more for the people that are viewing this later. This is an example of where you have a larger issue as the theme and then something very specific. I thought this was fascinating. So at U of M Flint, they have a teaching circle, and again, prior to the fall semester, they have 8 or 10 different themes that are advertised to everyone. And then you select based on where your interests are. Not everyone has to be in a teaching circle like
Comes
you.
up with the themes.
It did not say on there, so I'm thinking it has to be faculty members, especially based on what I read, but I don't know for certain. And they also have a teaching, and all of these places have teaching and learning excellence centers or a whole separate department. And I thought this was interesting because in that class, they are moving to accepting dual enrolled students, and I know this is something I'm struggling with, not accepting them, but just for the first time, I'm having some challenges as it relates to some dual enrolled sections. And so because they have that in this whole Promise Scholar program, 8 people, and because they're organized similar to where I started at UW Waukesha, right, where you have the tenure track, full-time lecturer, and then the part-time, they're all involved, so we would get our adjuncts as a part of that circle. And they talk about anything and everything related to that class. So you're able to take away some of the division meeting time and focus it in on that. So I could see that for FYS, I could see it for composition. Maybe not necessarily, I mean, Jeff, you're like the primary person in yours. It wouldn't necessarily be for mine because I'd be talking to myself. But for math, so there are some areas where that could be really beneficial. And then how they have something, we struggle sometimes, especially because of when we meet, to get our science faculty members, hit them at a good time. And I thought this was a great example because it's focused on STEM, right? And how could they do something that would be useful to them? And the way that's going to make this, if you guys want to go back and look at this and just see some examples, you could go back and read it. So that leads me, this is the last slide and it's now open for us, but looking at, so what if we decided, do you all want to keep it the same way that it is? And all of the reading that I did, and granted I only did about 5 or 6 hours of reading, looking at teaching circles, right? So in all of that reading that I did, there isn't like here are the top 10 techniques for teaching circles. It was more looking at, are your teaching circles talking about these kinds of things? How are you focusing? And as I was reflecting on our group here at West Shore, I thought, maybe we're not all focusing in as much as what we could be. That would help us to feel like we have something more concrete to show at the end of this. So maybe having a list of themes is a way to approach this, and then people go based on that theme. Maybe it's not at all. I don't know. But I thought in answer to what Jeff had just casually put down on that, best ways to use teaching circle, maybe this is a good time to think about what does it look like, what might help us here at West Shore so that we're not just simply checking that box.